Pension option survivor benefits. For the spouses in the room, this is for you. Every member of this pension plan gets a lifetime pension. There is no maximum amount of money you can take out of this plan. There is a minimum amount, but not a maximum amount. As long as you were alive, as long as you're returning oxygen into carbon dioxide, you get paid a monthly pension benefit. On the date of your death, if you are married, legally deemed to be married by whatever provincial statute, whether it's a legal marriage, a common law, same sex, whatever applies in the province in which you are a resident, and have a legally binding spouse, eligible spouse, that spouse will be entitled to either 60% or 50% of your pension at the date of your death. It is the spouse's choice as to which option you will receive your pension. So why is that spouse's choice? By law, any married member of any pension plan in Canada must receive their pension in the joint and survivor 60% option unless the spouse signs a waiver agreeing to take some lesser pension benefit. And so in our case, the only other option is a 50%. So why would your spouse agree to take a 10% reduction in their pension? Because that would increase your pension in the neighborhood of 1 to 3%. Everything has to actuarially balance out. So if you were taking 2 lifetime pensions, one for you and one for your spouse, because the spousal survivor benefit also is a lifetime pension. Your pension is until you die, and then when you die, your spouse is entitled to a lifetime survivor benefit, they call it, but it's a monthly pension, until the date of your spouse's death. So every pension comes with 2 lifetime pensions, one for you, one for your spouse. This 10% has to be paid for somehow, and it's paid for with between a 1 and 3% reduction in your monthly pension. And the 1 to 3% variance depends on the relative age of you and your spouse. If you and your spouse are the same age, your spouse may be older, your spouse may even be a couple of years younger, but relatively the same, you will see a reduction in the neighborhood of about 1%. If you are a pilot and you're on your 4th trophy wife and they're 23 years old, you're going to see a larger reduction because they know that she's going to kill you, and then they got to pay her a survivor benefit for 70 years till she's like 93, right? So that has to be accounted for actuarially in this process. You will make this decision when you retire. Right, and your date of retirement, you will choose the 50 or 60% option. More specifically, your spouse will. You will mark it off in the form, and the waiver form is included in the pension paperwork that comes to you if you choose to exercise that. So now there's a number of scenarios. There's no right answers, there's no wrong answers to this. There's a number of different scenarios as to why this makes sense to take the reduction. One is quite benign. Maybe both you and your spouse have worked long, full careers, have 2 good workplace pensions, which is a situation I'm fortunate enough to be in with my wife. And so, because this pension is not indexed, 1% is 1%. And so, you know, with my spouse's pension, we may decide that she can easily live on half of mine as opposed to 60%, and I'll take the extra 1% while I'm alive. No right answers, no wrong answers. The other scenario where this applies, and it's an unfortunate scenario, and you know, for obvious reasons, I guess we don't dwell on it. We have members in situations where when they retire, there is no reasonable expectation that their spouse will outlive them for health reasons. So yes, I'm married at my date of retirement, but my spouse has a terminal diagnosis, my spouse has a chronic illness that has you know, a very short life expectancy, and there's no reasonable expectation that they will be around to collect the extra 10%. So why pay for it? Anybody who's single at their date of retirement automatically gets the joint survivor 50%. Why? Because that's the highest dollar value that the pension plan will pay out. Even though you're single when you retire, your pension still comes with a lifetime 50% survivor benefit. And what that means is you might be single at the date you retire, but if you marry post-retirement, then that spouse is entitled to a 50% survivor benefit when you die, if they're still alive. Only the spouse of record at the date of retirement is ever eligible for 60%. So if you were married when you retire, and then say you divorce after you get retired, or if your spouse predeceases you and you remarry, that second spouse after retirement is only eligible for 50%, even though you will continue to take that 1% reduction. You made the option in selection, it's buyer beware, caveat emptor, right? And so if you took the selection for the 60% option when you retired, it doesn't matter. Only the spouse of record at the date of retirement is ever eligible for the 60%. So what I have described is what happens to your pension if you die after you have retired. Here is a key difference, and here's where you may need earmuffs for your wife. If you die in active service, the Pension Benefit Standards Act was changed in 2015 to say that somebody gets 100% of your pension. If you are married, you can guess who that somebody is. It will be your spouse. When you die in active service, you are deemed to have retired from the pension plan on the date you died. And your pension is calculated based on your age and your service on that date. And whatever pension you would have gotten had you retired on the date of your death, your spouse will get 100% of that pension. So again, unfortunate circumstances. I happen to be dealing currently with a gentleman that I've worked with in Vancouver for over 30 years. And he called me about 6 weeks ago. And he's been dealing with cancer for a number of years now. And he called me 6 weeks ago and he said, I've just come from my doctor, and he said, I've gotten the worst possible news. So the reason he called me was he wanted some advice, he wanted to talk to me about how he should deal with his pension. Should he retire? Should he stay active? What would be the best case scenario for his spouse? He now has a life expectancy that's measured in weeks. And so, as you might imagine, my advice to him was do not retire. Die as an active employee, your spouse will get 100% of your pension. As soon as you trigger your retirement date, your spouse now only gets 60% at most. Right? The other aspect that comes into this, you will see when I talk about post-retirement benefits, you were worth $10,000 dead as a retiree to Air Canada. As an active employee, you're worth a minimum of $60,000. So if you have a terminal diagnosis, if you are still an active employee, and while nobody likes to think about this, this is the fact of life, and it's one of the downsides, if you will, to this job that I have. I deal with members across this system, and I deal with far too many of these tragic circumstances. I get a lot of these calls from people who are dealing with these situations for themselves or for spouses, and they're asking what should they do, what's the best way to deal with this. And it's always in your best interest to die as an active employee. Monetarily, for your spouse, for your family, there are more benefits and higher payouts as an active employee than as a retiree. Beneficiaries. Your spouse is not your beneficiary. Your spouse is your spouse, and a spouse has a legal primacy over beneficiaries. Your spouse is first in line. Your spouse will get a lifetime survivor benefit on your death. That's either 100% or 60% or 50%, depending on the timing of your death, of your pension benefit. And they will get that for a lifetime. A beneficiary is not entitled to a monthly pension benefit. A beneficiary is only entitled to a one-time lump sum payment. And if you die in active service and you do not have a spouse, then your beneficiary will get a commuted value, a lump sum of 100% of the value of your pension. And if you are still working, as I am, beyond age 55, more than 80 points, you're getting close to retirement age, those can be some very significant values. You're talking about dollar figures that are $750,000 or up. Again, like the spousal pension, where it's either 100% or 60%, there's a significant difference of what your beneficiaries are entitled to after you retire. The day after you hit your retirement date, your beneficiaries are now only entitled to any unused portion of your contributions plus interest. So not your commuted value, not the total value of your pension, the amount of money you put in plus the minimum interest it was credited with. So that $750,000 I talked about, probably now you're talking about something that's like $150,000 or $160,000 in contributions and interest. So a significant difference. And for every monthly pension payment that you receive while you are retired, that gets deducted from your contributions and interest in determining how much it would be left to go to a beneficiary. Typically, most members of the plan will have used and received all of their contributions with interest to the plan within 3.5 to 4 years of your retirement date. All of your pension after 4 years retired is funded solely from returns on investments that were generated over your 25 or 30 or 35 years in the pension plan, because you pay for your own pension. So lump sums are only, beneficiaries are only entitled to lump sums. Significant difference if you die before or after. You can name beneficiaries at any time. You can change them at any time. You can do this online. It's a very painless process, very quick process. I cannot recommend strongly enough that everybody have beneficiaries named. And notice I said beneficiaries. You can have one primary beneficiary. If you have a primary beneficiary, they will get 100% of your pension. You can name your spouse as your primary beneficiary, although it's not necessary. Why? Because of your spouse. And if you have a spouse, when they go down the legal pecking order, as soon as they say, well, he died, was he married? Yes. He's got a spouse? Yes. Spouse gets a survivor pension. They don't even look at beneficiaries. Right? But you can name your spouse as your beneficiary. Whoever you name as a primary beneficiary will get 100% if they are alive. You can name multiple contingent beneficiaries, so secondary beneficiaries. If I've got one primary and 3 secondary beneficiaries and my primary is alive, my 3 secondaries don't get anything. It all goes to the primary. So if you have children, if you have more than one child, and you want them to share your pension benefit in the event of your death or the death of you and your spouse at the same time, you're killed in a car accident or something like that, don't name any of them as primary beneficiaries, because that one child will get 100%, the other children will get nothing. So either leave your spouse as your primary beneficiary or don't put anybody in, or put somebody else in. Name your children, name whoever you want, your mailman, your drinking buddies, your hockey team, whoever you want to put on there. Name them as secondary beneficiaries, and you can name a percentage. If you have 2 children, it's 50-50. If you like one more than the other, 80-20, however the hell you want to do it. It's up to you. You submit this online. Within a day or so, you'll get an email back with this form attached to it. They'll ask you to print it, sign it, and then either scan it and send it back electronically on an email or fax it back to them. It is that signed document that legalizes your choice. If you haven't got beneficiaries named, or if you want to change your beneficiaries, you should do this as soon as possible. You do not have to be retired to die. What this does is this gives Air Canada the legal authority to disperse your pension in the way you want it dispersed immediately. And by immediately, I mean within a couple of months. If you don't name beneficiaries, they'll wait for your will to be read, they'll wait for your estate to be probated, whatever has to happen. And ultimately, it'll go wherever you want it to go, but it's a timeline. And anybody that's been involved in being the executor of somebody's estate, you know that this can easily be a 20 to 24 month process to finalize an estate, have wills probated, all these types of things. And anything that goes through the estate, the government is going to take a piece of, right? When you probate the estate, that type of thing. So, particularly if you have younger children, teenage children, adults, where time is of the essence, if you will, you want to have them named as beneficiaries so they get the money sooner rather than later.